It's your girl Miracle Sims, and you are listening to God, Sex, and Love. Your daily dose of inspiration, the juice. It is November the 5th, 2021, and today the topic is, do you have to acknowledge something for it to exist? Happy Friday, everybody. Yes, I understand that is a whole question. But yeah, I guess that is the topic for today. Just to kind of update you all, not too much happened yesterday. I, tried to get rest yesterday. Spend some time with my little guy and just kind of have some moments of like doing nothing because, didn't have anything like specifically planned to do, and plus there were several things to do today. So since yesterday was kind of chill, I just kind of stayed in that place, right? But I did take in a lot of information yesterday. As y'all know, I was telling you guys about the whole children's book aspect. If you follow me on social media or specifically on Facebook, then you probably have seen me posting and whatnot. I even took a little different step, a different approach, and I actually reached out to the people that are in the group that I mentioned to you all, and asked for some feedback in regards to what book I should start with and whatnot. And so I appreciate those of you all that have responded and those that have given me some advice and feedback and voted in my poll. It gives me a good idea of what book I should start with. And last night I had a good time kind of working on it and all of that. So that's pretty much what it looked like yesterday. I did take some time to unwind. So those of you all that are holding me accountable in that aspect, I did give myself a manicure. I did not give myself the full experience because so long story short, like, I didn't want to try to sit there with the foot bath with my son running around because he would play in it and all of that. So I had to try to do it when he's like away. And because we had so much free time yesterday, there wasn't much like time with us being separate. And so I was waiting for him to go to sleep. And then by the time he actually went to bed, I just didn't feel like going through and doing all of that. So I just gave myself a manicure instead and was like, I'll just do that because, honestly, that's all y'all going to see on the video anyway when I go live later on. So speaking of, y'all know that today is Friday and a new episode of God, Sex, and Love, the talk show will be going live. No, I will be going live tonight with Miss Kimberly Morrow, a.k.a. Chosen of Chosen Arts. We'll be going live at 7, if the Lord's will, on our Facebook and YouTube. So that is the plan. I'm also supposed to be having a chat on another podcast around midday today. So yeah, man, that's what's on my current roster of things to do. Who knows in between then, obviously being a mom and just probably maybe working on these books or whatever, communicating with people or doing the little things I do. Shout out again to Boomer Smith, man. Super excited again about everything. But I ain't gonna get too deep into it. I'll let y'all know when it is time to let y'all know. Also, since I'm making little random announcements and comments, those of you all that are listening to the podcast, it would really, really, really be great if you let me know how you all feeling about this week. Because as you know, this entire week, I left the podcast instrumentalist or instrumental-less, excuse me. So I left it instrumentalist because, trying it out and everything, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I get that you guys probably can hear me more clearly without the instrumentals there, but at the same time, it's a little bit weird for me. So I want to know what y'all think. If y'all prefer the instrumentals not being there, then I will keep doing it this way. Maybe I'll figure out another way to have like at least, because I try to play like a little interlude or something to start y'all off with, to give you guys the feeling of today or whatever. But those are only like a couple of seconds, and it just, I don't know if it's enough. So I might have to I don't know, get an instrumental intro or something just to have something there. Because at least the live people, y'all get to see the intro and whatnot before I go live. But those of you out there listen to the podcast, I mean, it's literally not much. And then I'm just talking. So by all means, if you guys give me feedback in that aspect, that would be great. If not, I mean, I will just keep moving forward and figure it out. But I would love to know what you all think about the podcast now that I have not been using instrumentals for the past week. So, yeah. So the topic, right? The topic: do you have to acknowledge something for it to exist? Okay, so long story short, so I did my prayer meditation this morning, and it was centered around something totally different. Like it kind of had me focusing on like my physical body and health and whatnot. And not to say that I didn't want to, think about that, but at the same time, we already got accountability. Y'all see me in my journey with fitness and all this, so I'm just like, I didn't necessarily. That didn't necessarily resonate with me enough for me to talk about it right now. I didn't necessarily know what I was going to talk about. But eventually, as I just happened to look online a little bit before, like I was looking up random things, biblical things. But then at some point, I was getting ready to look up something, and then I came across an article. And there's this lady, she's a celebrity reality star that I'm familiar with because I watch the show that she's on every now and then. And so I saw her name in the ad, and it was saying that she's pregnant. And I was like, wow, interesting, because on the show she was supposed to be pregnant, but then she had a miscarriage, and all this other stuff had just happened on the show. And then here this article is saying that she's pregnant. So I was like, okay, interesting, So I just happened to read the article, because I was like, well, I don't follow her on social media, but every now and then I'll like take a look at her page because I think I'm inspired by her in a way. Like, she seems to be doing a lot of things entrepreneurship wise and all of that. So, and I mean, she's a, beautiful lady as well and whatnot. So, every now and then I might look on her page and be like, oh, like what she got going on? Oh, X, Y, and Z. So I know I haven't been on her page in a while. So again, I was like, okay, so she's pregnant then? Okay, interesting. And then, so I just happened to go read the article. And I read the article, and it just was very interesting. It was very interesting. But one of the most interesting things that I came across as I was reading it was this quote here. And so she says, and I quote, "There is no guide that tells you how to live your life." And so, okay, and I get it, you know what I'm saying? But for me, it was a little strange, right? Because, well, one, so at some point, she ends up talking about like how she's a single mom and X, Y, Z. She's going to be a single mom, and when they asked about the father, she mentioned that well, she's like the Virgin Mary. For all she knows, she just ended up pregnant, and that's what that's going to be, right? And I was like, okay, so you acknowledge the birth of Christ, the virgin birth. So you're familiar with that because you kind of in a way quoted it as, this is your route, X, Y, and Z. So that's one thing. Then the other thing is the majority of the article, every response she had was in reference to God, right? And being like, well, this is God's will for me to have these babies and X, Y, and Z. But then in the middle of the interview, after saying all of that, she says, there is no guide that tells you how to live your life. And so for me, I was like, wait, well, because there is the Bible. I mean, some people some people don't use it as a guide and whatnot, but that doesn't mean it's not there. Like, there is one, Now whether you use it, that's a whole nother thing. But to say that there isn't one, but then at the same time say all this about God's will, but then acknowledge that the virgin birth in another statement, but then in another statement your photo shoot is kind of centered around some other deity or whatever. It just was the whole thing was very interesting or whatever. And I mean, hey, no judgment. Everybody is in different places. You know what I'm saying? All I'm saying is this is what led me to the topic today. Asking the question, if something, do you have to acknowledge something for it to exist? Because, again, like, I guess in her mind, there's no guide, right? There's no guide to tell you how to live your life, but I know there's a Bible, you know what I'm saying? I think other Bible readers understand that there's a Bible and understand as you read the Bible that there is a guide to show you how to live your life. And everything. That can go with any and everything, though. Like, do you have to acknowledge me for me to exist, or do I just exist regardless of your acknowledgement or not? Because I guess this is what it boils down to when it comes to God, when it comes to the Bible, when it comes to anything. In my humble opinion, whether we acknowledge it or not, it exists. The Bible, God, me, you, anything. But hey, I don't know. I guess for me, reflecting on all of that today kind of made me think, like, you know what? I guess this is why the Bible repeatedly says, like, you have to, first believe that God exists, right? You first have to be acknowledging him and all that before you can even do anything else, in that category. I mean, but let's just go. Let's just go into some things I came across this morning. So when I looked up the definition of acknowledge, it says accept or admit the existence or truth of. And then the second definition says recognize the fact or importance or quality of. So, yeah. Again, do you have to acknowledge something for it to exist? Again, I think I've answered that, but hey, I don't know. Maybe we're still going deeper here. Maybe we still don't know. One of the first verses I came across this morning was Proverbs 3:5-6. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him and he will make straight your paths. Yeah, man, in all your ways, man, in all our ways, we're supposed to be acknowledging God. So again, I guess, if we don't do that, does that mean he doesn't exist? Again, y'all can answer those questions within yourself, but that is the question for today. Now, Revelations 4:11, it says, worthy are you, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and by your will, they existed and were created. Yeah, I mean, there's verses, I think it might be in the Go Deeper section for today, I can't remember, but there is a verse that says, like, people, basically we don't have any excuse because everything acknowledges God. Like, everything that is made is something that is like proof of God and his existence. So again, the question is, do you have to acknowledge something for it to exist? Romans 1:28, it says, and since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. Well, I mean, I guess that's what it looks like to not acknowledge God, right? And, again, these are like the results. These are like the consequences of that. Um, Again, we don't like to deal with the consequences. That might be the pope of the whole situation. I guess, you want to feel like, oh, if I don't have to acknowledge God, I don't have to acknowledge any of that stuff, you know, doesn't relate to me, X, Y, and Z. However, I mean, it's just very interesting because, again, um, I think you could still see the consequences, right? You can see the consequences of those actions, regardless of if you want to acknowledge God or not, regardless of if you want to acknowledge what's in the Bible or not. I believe we can see the consequences of not acknowledging or trying not to acknowledge. So, again, I think I've answered the question multiple times today. Whether you acknowledge it or not, that does not mean it does not exist. Again, this young lady feels as if, there is no God that tells you how to live your life. Well, there is. It's called the Bible. And but just because if you don't acknowledge it, right? If you don't study it, if you just because you don't apply it to your life doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means you're not acknowledging it. It just means that you are. I mean, if we go with the definition, you're not accepting or admitting the existence of truth that it does exist. Um, and I mean, I guess this is another reason why we got to be careful, right? When people keep talking about God and X, Y, and Z. Um, I came across this quote the other day, and I came across it, I saw it, I kept scrolling, but then I felt the need to respond. But when I tried to go back, I couldn't find it again. And I just was like, well, that's probably a good thing. Because I wasn't necessarily going to respond on the person's page, but I was thinking about responding, sharing it on GSL and responding in that way. But basically, it was kind of talking about, like, it talks about God, but then it was like, it also mentioned about God being a woman, and then also mentioned about God telling like God being a woman that dated multiple uh, prophets and told them all the same thing. And I'm like, man, this there's no way, man. I've talked about this like way when I first started the juice, man. There is no way that we could sit here and really think that every mention of God, right, or every religion. Let's just go ahead and be clear here. There's no way we can sit here and imagine that every religion is selling us the same thing, because it's not. Jesus debunks that whole thing by himself. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and maybe you don't know what I'm saying, but this is why you got to read the Bible, or at least get yourself familiar with it before you say things. Because my thing is like, again, Jesus by himself, without even getting into other doctrine. Just Jesus. Jesus by himself debunks this whole idea of all religions leading to the same God and all these things saying the same things. It doesn't. It doesn't all say the same thing, because they don't all acknowledge Jesus in the same way. So, yeah, we gotta be careful when people talk about God, because obviously I'm not sure what God this lady was referring to. Even though she did have the Virgin Mary comment, but I mean, and no judgment, man. I'm just somebody that read the article and got inspiration for this topic for today. But I'm just saying we got to be careful about that. And yeah, but that's a whole nother subject by itself, and that is the juice. But look, y'all, the Bible verse of today. It's another one of those confirmations this morning, at least to me. It's 2 Timothy 3:16. It says, all scriptures is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. Friends, I hope you all enjoyed this juice this morning. Thank you so much for listening to God, Sex, and Love, your daily dose of inspiration, the juice. I pray you guys can go forth and have a wonderful day, and I look forward to talking to you all tonight on God, Sex, and Love, the talk show, live with Miss Kimberly Morrow, aka Chosen of Chosen Arts. But if not tonight, then I'll see you all tomorrow if the Lord's will. Bye-bye.
The Progress Podcast is a faith-based, family-friendly podcast established during quarantine, promoting progress as a pathway to purpose. As I'm growing, you'll grow too, because it is about progression, not perfection.